Matt, we are celebrating American independence this week on probably, as many people know, on July 4th, which is,
Yeah.
an exciting time for the Americans where we will take the day off. We will eat hot dogs, hamburgers, probably have some cookouts, maybe find a pool, all of the important things. But we are an international podcast,
Yes,
and
we
your
are.
adopted home country of Australia. I feel like we should not leave them out. And I thought, you've been in Australia now many years. I can't even recall how many. 4, 5, 6?
It's
Longer?
8 years.
Wow.
Like my first trip over here, or when we moved here, we skipped the 4th of July because we were on a plane and
Oh my
lost it to
goodness.
international travel.
Well, given you've been there 8 years, I thought
Wow.
today we would start with a pop quiz for you. I'm going to ask you 3 questions about Australian history and see how you do. And I'm also going to admit that I use a little chat GPT and Gemini to help me with these questions. I'm going to appoint Michael Neal. He is a longtime listener, Australian. He will be, he can officially correct me if this is wrong. If I score it incorrect, he can issue the final correct score. And finally, if you do poorly on this quiz, I will leave it to him to decide whether or not you can stay in Australia. So, with all of that on the line, are you prepared? Are you ready for the first question?
Bring it.
All right. Question 1. What year did the British arrive in Australia and establish the first colony?
The first fleet landed. Was that 1876?
1876 is your answer. Your answer is incorrect.
Oh,
the British
no.
arrived in Australia in 1788.
17. Dyslexia.
Establishing the
Yes,
first.
1788. They needed a new colony because to keep their prisoners in because the U.S. had rebelled.
That was my next part. Establishing the first convict settlement at. Do you know where? Do you know where they established it? Or the name of it?
The first one?
Yeah, the first convict settlement. What was the name of it?
Oh,
it was named Sydney Cove. So there you go. Now we'll give you a listen. You didn't get that one right, so that's -1. But you did throw in First Fleet. Quickly, maybe explain to everyone what the First Fleet is, because I'll let you redeem yourself. You get a quick explanation of that.
So the First Fleet was so it's actually January 20th was the day that they landed. The First Fleet was led by the guy oh God, you put me on too much of a spot. The First Fleet landed in Australia on January 20th, and was they were looking for a new colony, and they had, I think, 8 ships, and it was mostly convicts, and they were establishing this colony in Sydney, and I don't know, where I live, Manly. They introduced themselves by killing some of the locals, but reporting in their diaries that they were extremely fit and manly. So that's why I live in Manly, Australia. But so they landed here in Australia, in Sydney, and they set up some colonies, and the water was bad because they were kind of swampy areas, so they kind of expanded up into like.
All right, well, hold on before you go on. Let me fact check a little bit. Like, I don't know, as a teacher here, I want to give you some extra points, but we did have some factual inaccuracy. So First Fleet was the name given to the 11 ships. 11 that left Great Britain to establish the penal colony in Australia. They arrived in Port Jackson, which is, I guess, in Sydney.
Yeah, that's
but you did get the date right on January 26th, 1788. So I don't know. Like, you struggled there with the question. You did get some inadvertent.
Hey, I already passed my citizenship test. I'm done.
Okay. All right. Okay. That was all right. Okay. Question number 2. All right. When did Australia gain its independence from Britain?
So January 1st, 1901 was Federation Day. So that's when they established a separate. They had just been kind of a colony of the UK, and so then they became a federation of all these different colonies grouped together. And then I'm not sure the exact day they became a country. I don't know if, like, I guess they were a commonwealth. So I don't know what the distinction is when they were like.
The year? Do you have the year?
1901.
Okay. So I don't know. Again, I think I'm gonna have to already defer to Michael Neal on this for the official thing. So there was a little bit of a trick question here. Okay.
Oh no.
Here's the answer. Okay. Australia actually never declared formal independence from Britain.
Right.
It became self-governing dominion within the British Empire in 1901, which you got correct, forming the Commonwealth of Australia, which is sort of like meandered. You ran into the word Commonwealth in your word salad there. So I don't know, like if we were like testing it out, although I feel like this was like kind of like the trick question in like Australia elementary school, was like actually technically we never really did become independent. We just became we never really left Britain, right? So I think that's kind of interesting. So I don't know. Again, I maybe have credit here. I don't know. I'm not sure how to score that. So all right. So this is your last and final question. I think this is one I hope you can get exactly right, because that would really make your case for staying in Australia. So finally, who was the first prime minister of Australia? Yeah, I was wondering, like, does this equate to like the first president, or is it?
Oh
Not
yeah.
Or is prime minister like not as well known?
Oh,
Right?
but like not the first governor, but the first prime minister.
First prime minister of Australia.
Geez. I don't know off the
Oh
top of
my
my head.
goodness.
I'm
Oh my
sure
goodness. I thought this was
well.
so
Okay,
easy.
wait. I can start telling you who it's not. It's not Flinders, because he might have been the first governor. They named a bunch of junk after him. It's somebody who's got a bunch of stuff named after him, I'm sure.
I love that. Would be like a great writing on this thing. It's like teacher, like I'm sure it's someone that has lots of things named after him.
No, I mean there are just like, if you go into Sydney and Melbourne are just
Yeah.
lousy with a lot of the same names, where they're like, we're going to name this thing after this person, and we're going to give it a street and a neighborhood and an airport, and it's just on and on. No, I have no idea who the first.
All right. The first prime minister of Australia was Edmund Barton, who served from January 1st, 1901 to September 24th, 1903.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe we're gonna give you like one out of three, maybe 1.5 out of 3. I don't know.
Wait. We've got an Australian in the message in the messages. He gave me credit, so
he did. Okay.
He just pointed out no Australian knows that. So there you go.
Oh, really? Because I wasn't sure if this is like a George,
what they teach
not
the
a George
kids
Washington type question where it's just everybody knows that answer.
Yeah, it's first fleet and then like first governor, because like this Australia history starts with that. I mean, Australian colonial history starts with that, with like first fleet, first governor.
Good catch. Let's not get us in
and then
yes, there's a whole
and then all the states they get a bunch of penal colonies, except for South Australia, who we never had any. And then then it just devolves into all the local stuff, which they gloss over really fast. And now my kids are learning about the Vietnam War, and it just kind of jumps ahead. They hit the highlights, right? World War I, you get Gallipoli. World War II, you get the trail in Indonesia, and and Darwin, and then they hit all the same highlights. Like all three of my kids kind of like progressed through Australian history. They hit all the same highlights, and then they complain that it's U.S. heavy history, because a lot of it is tied to the U.S. post World War II.
Yeah, I can see that.
They complain because they get called out in class. Hey, can you tell us about American history?
Like,
and my kids are like, I've been in Australia the whole time.
Well, just a couple thoughts on this one. Obviously, as we all know, like where it's never become more apparent to me in my life, where it's like where you live, what country you live in, and kind of the time you go to school, highly dependent on what history you learn. It's just very contextual. You know what I mean? It's just, there's just a lot of variations of it. Two, and more importantly, before we move on, I just want to say, I think the idea that Australia just never got around to declaring their formal independence is like the most Australian thing I've ever. It's just like, like all the Australian people I know, it's like just, it's fine. Just take the rest of the day off. Should I check in with anyone? Should I do things? No, it's fine.
Well, in World War II,
well, I just feel like culturally, it is a country. It's like, you know what? We're not going to worry about the paperwork. Like we've made our decision. We told everyone, let's all just hit the pub Friday afternoon and move on. I think that's in contrast to the Americans, like we're writing letters, we're like there's a lot of process and a lot of like, grandstanding when we do things. Whereas Australia's just like, yeah, well, like the
There's
paperwork,
definitely a
don't worry
lot of
about it.
that in the history. You've got like in World War II, the Australian and New Zealand military were under the Brits, and the Brits told them, we need you to go to India to fight the Japanese, while Australia was being attacked by the Japanese. And so they were like, no, we're going back. and then after World War II, they kind of retroactively were like, well, they were allowed to do that.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. Even better.
Yeah, there's all sorts of little stories like that. Australian history is wonderful. It's
all right. Well, finally, Graham is in the chat, and he's from Australia, so he says you can stay. But again, I will defer to Michael. I will allow him. I feel like he's going to be the last person to grade you out. If he lets you stay, then you can stay. And maybe tune in to next time when we eventually add Cote. Ask Cote some questions about Dutch history. I'm sure that will go extremely well.
That's much longer and much more involved. You should ask him like where his loyalty to Spain lies.
Yeah, even in that, and also it'll be almost impossible to like pronounce any of the names or the towns. So maybe we'll just make Cote explain the difference between Holland and the Netherlands to us. That's always a fun explanation. I enjoy that every time I hear it. So. All right. Well, Matt, we did have some news this week, some thought pieces as we like to kind of read through during the week. And a couple of them jumped out to me. One was a eulogy for DevOps. And then another one was DevOps isn't dead, but it's not in great health either. And I thought we could have run down some of these and just kind of like see what we believe. Like, where do we believe the state of DevOps is? And so the one that I like better, right, was the second one. DevOps isn't dead, but it's not in great health either. So I thought maybe we'd come through and let's look at some of the challenges that were outlined and see if we agree or disagree. So the first challenge that the author kind of throws out here was quote unquote oversimplification, meaning the term DevOps was reduced to a set of tools and processes rather than a philosophical shift towards collaboration. What do you think? Do we agree with this? Do you think that's a true, if you will, challenge that DevOps is still facing?
I mean, yeah, it's people are hard, and people applied to fast changing technical problems with a lot of moving pieces. It's definitely not. There's no silver bullets here. I mean, there have never been silver bullets for DevOps. But people don't like hearing, you have to put in the work as the answer. And so I think oversimplification is it always goes back to that, here's a sketch, here's the outline of an owl, do the rest. And it's the same story again and again. Like you got to put in the work, and nobody really wants to do that. And so there are no silver bullets. There never have been, but people wish there were.
So I want to throw out a different one. One of the ideas I kind of was thinking more about this was sort of like, is it realistic, right? And because like we've had so many culture talks on DevOps, but ultimately, does it come down to like, are we just fundamentally asking people to do something that they just can fundamentally not do? Because like, let's take other examples of like, if you ask a group of people and very few people are successful at it, right? Maybe it's like going on a diet or completing some type of training or doing something really hard, but they don't ultimately want to do it, right? At some point, do you kind of have to sit back and say to yourself, do I need to teach this a different way? Do I need to rethink this? Or do we need to just look at how we're doing things and maybe rethink the entire idea that like we went into this thinking that we could change everyone, but it's not happening? Like, is there some kind of underlying, because like, I don't know how long we would say DevOps has been going. I don't know, like 15 years, maybe, I don't know, 14, something like that. Like, I mean, we're in it so long. It's like, hey, maybe this is just not the right path. Like the goal itself, while noble, is sort of unachievable for the regular person. Therefore, is it even useful to keep pursuing it? What do you think about that idea?
I think acknowledging that it's a worthwhile goal is is worthwhile. I mean, you know, if you aspire for nothing, t- congratulations, you've made it. um, but you know, knowing that there are example organizations that, at least from the outside, look like they have succeeded, or you know, they found a working, viable path, and they've wanted to share these patterns with you. Everybody should want that. You know, you should want something better. Um, but getting there, putting in the work in a workplace where incentives aren't aligned, people are coming and going, it's always hard. And you know, if you can put in if just shipping it today, and not worrying about tomorrow is the modus operandi for most people, well, that's always kind of been the status quo. And so I think overcoming that inertia, it's always been the same problem. People know what they should be doing, but doing the right thing, we're not even asking you to floss. We're asking you to like have a whole regime. It's not just like, oh, you should floss. It's like, no, you should spend 15 quality minutes a day brushing your teeth, and this total oral hygiene package. It's a lot to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a lot to ask, and I think this is maybe why like people like Systems Initiative and other people are trying to bring like there's this idea just in general out there, right? That hey, it hasn't delivered. Are there new ways to do things? Is there ways to, and maybe this whole fundamental thing. I think we talked about infrastructure as code, on a couple episodes, right? The fact that like everyone's got a code and everyone has to learn all these different languages, and it's really complicated, but maybe just acknowledging to some degree, it's like, no, like, there are people that want to do ops work. There are people that want to do, what we consider more traditional developer type stuff. And like, fighting the trend of like making everyone do everything, right? Or because I think a lot of the developers sometimes, like in the chat and Software Defined Talk Slack and other places, you'll see it's like the developer mindset sometimes is like, well, all they did was dump everything on the developers, which is not true. I don't think that's really true. But there's definitely like a feeling out there of times. So I think you kind of talk to some developers. It's like, yeah, well, you just like, I had to know all this domain stuff, how to write the code, be great at algorithms, and then you dumped all this other stuff on me, and you didn't really, enable me to be successful. And like, yeah, I'm a little bit upset by that. I'm a little bit angry. So, and I get where they're coming from. Like, I understand where they're coming from. That's why I kind of think to myself as like, oh, if we just ask maybe I don't know, is an analogy like in a different world. Like I feel like I am like just an informal evangelist for like password managers. Like the other day I was talking to somebody, they were like, oh, I got all this stuff, I got to set it up and we got to share it. And all. I'm like, oh, you should use a password manager. And they were just like, can't do it. Just, we can't do it. The people wouldn't learn it. I can't. I mean, it was just like just a fire hose of no's. And you're like, yeah, I was like, yeah. Well, this is where I become a password manager. So I'm like, yeah, it's just like there's just a limit to like who will adopt it, and I can't. Like I have to accept that. Like I mean, it's just like, and maybe like passkeys or something else will fix it. But like I kind of think to myself, long term, it's like, well, there has to be some new way of fixing it. And that's kind of how I think of this DevOps stuff. It's like at some point, there's probably going to have to be a different way. So
yeah. Well, I mean, you have to have the institutional buy-in, and most people aren't part of the institution. They're just working there, right? And so if you do not feel if you're not committed to the cause, you don't have to be. I mean, that's kind of the thing. It's like if you can just get by with the status quo, well, that's fine. Most organizations aren't going to like fight hard to make the change.
Yeah,
and
exactly right.
You've always been pushing this boulder up the hill. Maybe we can just hang out with the boulder at the bottom.
That's right. Well, I think that kind of gets to like the one of the other ones that was highlighted in here, lack of cultural change, which was defined as despite the emphasis on cultural transformation, many organizations fail to truly adopt DevOps principles, instead focusing on implementing new tools and processes, right? Which I think is like super common, right? I feel like that's like the number one thing. And that was one of the things, another one that was cited, commercialization, right? Vendors and consultants capitalize on the trend, offering products and services and often miss the point of true DevOps, which is probably the number one thing, right? Like there are literally 400,000 DevOps tools at this point. I counted them all. And you're right.
Everyone has written their share.
Yeah, and I totally get it. Like you do, like it's such human nature, and I totally fall in this too. It's like it would be so great if we could just buy something and make this work. You know what I mean? You want who doesn't want to like buy their way out of like a hard problem? So like it's just like it's the, if you will, the need is so big there. There's nothing the vendors can do but like rush in with like a whole bunch of tools that hopefully people buy or they want them to buy.
And I think there is, as a consumer of vendor products, it's tempting, right? You look at these all-in-one platforms and you're like, at least it's someone else's problem, right? At least when people talk about platform engineering, they're just like, all I have to do is target the platform. They're not focused on maintaining the platform. They're focused on just tell me where to throw my stuff. Right. And hopefully this magical black box is the solution to all my problems. And that black box is either, it's maintained by a vendor or it's a bunch of stuff held together by some team who, are cursing the idea of, of DevOps, or they're just happily polishing their bespoke, mechanism that, they've made the black box. And so, who is responsible for that is, if everyone is responsible, then I guess that's the goal of DevOps is we all know what's happened. There's no black box. It's we all can understand what it is and take part in this. But again, that's more work. But as like Dora and the like have pointed out, if everyone is aware, those are the high performing organizations. There is no full transparency. It doesn't have to be every developer is responsible for every piece of the stack, but they are engaged with it, as opposed to, oh, I just tossed my containers into the platform. We're good.
Yeah, and maybe in the end, all we're saying here to some degree, right, is just, and I bet you could like go through like every management book ever written. It's like they're always talking about culture, and it just comes down to like there is no reliable, simple way to both build a successful culture, and if you're not in a successful culture, changing it. Like there is no like, and there'll be like, I mean, you can read every book on culture in the world, and I don't know. Sometimes they contradict each other. And it's like, but it is the hardest thing to do, and so maybe that's really what we're getting at. Is just like, if all of these things come back to like change culture, you're basically taking on the most difficult problem in business. So like, don't pretend you're going to just fix that overnight.
Yeah. I mean, it's like trying to, read a book to get yourself out of depression, right? It's like, well, sure. There's full of helpful tips, but you have to like engage and put in the effort. And, you have, if again, if there were silver bullets, I'd be selling them, right? That's what you want to do. But yeah, you just can't. You have to put in the effort, and you have to want to put in the effort.
I think that's the key thing. You have to want to put in the effort. I think that is the number one thing. Maybe that should be the talk. It's like, question one: do you want to put in the effort? Question two: when everyone says no, it's like, okay,
okay.
How can now at least we're starting at absolute truth. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, what can we do to convince people to try to put in the effort, which is like very, very difficult. Now, the one thing when you talk about the decline, I wanted to get your take on this because this is a phrase that gets used a lot. And this is not a test question. The quiz is over, but is shift left, the rise of shift left. And so this basically says like one reason, maybe things maybe declined a little bit in DevOps is the increasing emphasis on shift left. Testing, quality assurance earlier in the development process has led to a shift away from traditional DevOps practices. So I don't know. Is that a good definition of shift left? Would you agree with that?
I think equating DevOps with shifting left is trying to buy a tool to get yourself the organizational change. So if you're like, oh, if everything just goes into CI/CD, we will have achieved this Nirvana. Well, it's not that simple. It's part of a high performing organization for sure. And so I think it's become this um, shorthand that is incorrect that people want to use. Like, oh, if we just shift everything left, everything's going to be fine and dandy. Well, no, but it does give people a place to mentally anchor onto the process of changing, towards DevOps. If you think of everything as the pipeline and we're shifting everything left, it's a nice mental picture, but it short circuits things like blameless postmortems and all sorts of people over process kind of concepts that you just, it's not that simple. If it
Yeah.
was that simple, you could buy it from one of the many vendors who are happy to sell you this shift left vision, and you can't buy DevOps.
Yeah, well, there's a whole version of like shift left where I think it's sort of like it's it's like this unsaid part of it. It's like, well, yeah, what we're gonna do is we're gonna shift left, and then I'm gonna keep doing exactly what I've been doing. It's sort of like, you know what I mean? It's just like I am in testing, so like, yeah, I'll just do the testing earlier, but nothing will be it'll all be done exactly the same, and you'll just move my box over a little bit. Same thing with security.
Exactly.
It's like
My stream merges in earlier in the process.
right. It's
Gotcha.
just like, oh, instead of security at the end, they just do their stuff at the beginning, but they just like issue a bunch of rules that everyone's mad, but they never talk to anyone, right? Or they never,
Right.
Again, that's the perception from developers. I'm sure that on the security side is like, yeah, we gave them all the information, they just won't talk to us, right? That's like, but again, it's just like, well, we just shifted left, so we have all the problems earlier. But at least they're earlier, which is kind of true. I mean, which is, I guess, not a bad thing. So I don't know. I mean, I guess the summary of all of this is like, yeah, DevOps still very difficult to implement. I don't know what's going to happen with the whole thing, but I do just kind of agree with the general feeling of like something new. Like we got to, I feel like we should try something new, but then I also read this other one. It's like, well, the problem is then these things just become buzzwords, right? And so that was another one thing they talked about in here is that quote unquote became just another buzzword without unique value. But maybe that's what happens. It's like agile. I don't know. Like it's agile.
I was about to say agile is exactly.
Agile had a good run there. I feel like we still use it,
Well,
but no one's
and the concepts. The concepts stuck. Some of the concepts stuck, and so some of these DevOps ideas are definitely mainstreamed, right? They've been adopted, so I think the landscape is better, it has achieved progress. It's not, we've raised the water level for everybody, but the number of high performing organizations probably hasn't substantially changed. And I think that's where we've gotten, like, on average, things are slightly better.
Yeah. And maybe that's the way we should grade these things out a little bit. And again, almost like in our internal counseling meeting here, it's like, we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. It's like, you can't eat perfect 100% of the time. Eventually you're going to have pizza once in a while, but like, hey, are you eating better a lot of the time? That's
right.
better. You know what I mean? Are you at least
moving?
Maybe is your build mostly automated? At least like, can you mostly get a build out? Like,
have you dropped the cycle time from 3 months to 2?
Exactly. Like it's like
it's progress.
It's progress. Right? And the same thing with Agile. It's like, I was gonna say the same thing with Agile. It's like, okay, well, like, can you like add some new features in some period of time that isn't like a year? You know what I mean? That isn't like going back to the old waterfall. Okay. Like, in a quarter, can you get some stuff out and make a new quarterly plan? It's like, that is a lot better than we go back to like, late 90s where it's like, well, there's a 1 year, there's a document, a requirements document. It's 400 pages long, and there's an ops team and there's a dev team. Nobody speaks, and the release will happen in 3 years, and it will not do anything people want. Right? Like we all live through that. I mean, it's not like that now. It's better. It's better than it was. It's not really.
Better. Yeah.
It's not, but it's not like we have seen great. I guess that's the hard thing too. Like we've seen a few organizations get great, and we all kind of think to ourselves,
well, at least now we know. We know there's a road to Nirvana, right? Before we were just like, man, software sucks.
And maybe that's where we should end this topic on and say like, hey, listen, there's at least a road to follow, even if it's really, really hard to follow it. So we're going to claim a small victory there. All right. Now, the other thing this week that came out was the infrared report from none other Red Point. See what they did there, Matt? They're just throwing red, like a lot of red in their thing. And this was about a bunch of stuff. But one of the things that they, of course, focused in a lot about was open source. I'm sorry, not open source, but LLMs and AI.
Yeah.
And one of the charts, because we've talked about this along with many other people, talking about open source LLMs versus private model LLMs. And in the report, though, I thought they did a great job kind of showing exactly how the open source models essentially track the private source models by about, anywhere from like 6 to 10 months or 6 to 12 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the reason I like this chart so much is like, I think they're basically calling it. Like, we all sort of have this debate, like, well, will the foundation models become this area of differentiation? And then you got to have a great foundation model, and only a few companies will. But if you look at this chart and the way they plotted them, it's like, no, it seems like they basically track very linearly, right? It's that, like, yeah, if you just wait, so whatever the best model is now, I guess it's Anthropic's Claude is like scoring the highest. If we just wait, 6 to 12 months, it'll be
free,
an open source version. So to me, this just means it's like there is no differentiation here, and I guess we should be thankful for like Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, everyone else. It's great that they're doing all this work, but at the end, it feels a little bit. It kind of feels a little bit like a Kubernetes kind of situation where it's like we're gonna get to the end of this, and everyone's gonna kind of have the same thing, and it's not gonna be very differentiated, and therefore it can either be free as an open source or free as or low cost. Right. Like, I don't know. You agree with this? You agree with this chart?
Absolutely. I feel like this is a very fine example of the open source world saying, you are not making this a closed market. Because Kubernetes is a good example, right? We've talked about it over the years, but it was initially started as we can't let AWS own everything. Right. And so if we make this open source alternative, you can ostensibly run your applications anywhere. And, for better or worse, we're definitely on that path. AWS still making money, hands over fists, but I was talking with a hyperscaler recently, and I was like, what you're doing is not, the playbook is well known, right? It's all about execution. Yes, there are little, closed source advantages here and there, but like, if you wanted to start your own public cloud, you could do it with, 95% open source. You're gonna need $1 billion of infrastructure, but that's besides the point. The point is, like, the money is not in the IP of how to do a public cloud. The money is in the execution. And so that is where we are with LLMs is, the people are like, oh, there's going to be one LLM to rule them all. It's like, only for 6 months, right? In 6 months, anyone can have that level of expertise, which is why the money then shifts to the industry specific LLMs where, people have spent the time to learn a domain, to learn, to teach it how to do some particular skill set where, it's not the LLM that matters. It's the domain and getting everything, into a customer, an end user useful format. Right. Yeah. So these LLMs, keep researching them. Thanks. But they are completely commoditized, or, they will be.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, a lot of people just refer to that. The application layer is the place where the money will be made. Yeah. And just to reiterate what you're saying, it's like, yeah, the applications that figure out how to, if you will, use the LLM to provide like a specific tangible business or consumer benefit will ultimately be the ones. Now, I guess the only question I wonder is like, so we're reading this chart. I would assume people at Microsoft and Google and everyone else are reading this chart and they're like, we're spending like billions, tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah.
To build something that most everyone else is going to have. I guess if you're Google and Microsoft, though, you just feel like it's an existential kind of thing. Like if your competitor is doing it, you must do it too, even if it's, even if at the end nobody really makes any money, you just can't allow any advantage to, if you will, emerge. So that it's almost like we have the world's largest companies with the most money, like I'll just throw them out: Meta, Microsoft, and Google. And it's like, yeah, none of you can stop, even though it's going to cost you all a lot of money, and it'll be hard for you to make that money back. It's kind of what's, I think, setting up.
But the flip side of that is they all have first mover advantage. When it comes to choosing an AI, I'm probably going to go with something I know because it was popular first. So when I start my AI search, I probably start with like ChatGPT. I end up in OpenAI camp. Maybe I go to Gemini, but it doesn't matter that there are 600 other LLMs that do perfectly good equivalent work. They didn't have the advantage of being first to market and capturing that awareness and providing those demos of what it could be. So if I woke up today and you showed me ChatGPT and I hadn't seen it before, I'd still be amazed, right? And so as more users come into the consumer side of the market, like they need to have things that are ready to consume. That's where the money is. So I don't think it's a waste to invest in these things because you are still getting that first mover advantage of capturing that market share, because that's the existential fear for the likes of Google is like, if somebody, makes a better agent search alternative today, in 6 months, they could be 30% of the market. It could be just something crazy overnight, because that's essentially what ChatGPT did, right? And the first 6 months of AI were this this gold rush of, look at all these crazy things you can do with it, and all sorts of things popped out. But we're still saying, they're still the standard, even though, this chart shows them way behind, because they were 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
For sure. They have the mind share. And I think you're right. And also too, I guess the other thing is, like, we look at these very linear looking lines, right? Is like, it's the unknown unknowns. It's like, yeah, it's always possible somebody writes like another paper, like, the whole attention's all you need. Like there's some other version of that. Like somebody figures it out and is like, actually, the way you build an even better one is you do this other thing, right? The secret is division. Forget about matrix multiplication. It was division the whole time, right? And then they go off and the models get like, exponentially better. Like if you want to be that person, right? You want to be the one that would figure that out. Now, of course, like, I don't know if that's true. This whole community of researchers seems so small, and they seem to all know each other. It's like if someone discovered it, it feels like, well, someone would just leave and start another company and do the same thing. But so it seems hard, but like it's always possible. So that it's going to be interesting. So I guess we should thank all the major hyperscalers and large companies for building this out for us.
But we're not talking about AWS here, right? So is AWS the black line? Are they the open source line that's just
at this
6
point,
months behind?
They are, they would say they have the
behind.
relationship with Anthropic, and then they have Anthropic, and then they have in this, looks like all the open source ones are the black dots on this graph. And they would say they have all of them available on AWS. And of course, we talked about it. I think we talked about last week. I think it's Metis. I think they're starting their own, I think I was saying it wrong last week. I think they're starting their own Chat GPT type competitor
interface, right?
Interface.
And that's the thing. You can focus on the interface and change out the LLM behind it, right? I don't think, the LLMs are not the killer feature. The killer feature is being able to have a conversation that recalls history and has context. That's why I'm bullish on Apple, because like Apple, sure, they partnered with OpenAI, but in 6 months, when they are shipping this stuff, they're not going to say, oh, it's this version of the LLM. No, it's going to be Apple Silicon, right? Well, you don't care that it's ARM, you just care that it's the Apple Silicon.
Yeah. Well, to go further there, I mean, I think it's almost like, who's the shim strategy? Who's just the pass through? Apple has clearly adopted that, right? So
it's Apple Intelligence. It's
right. They have the relationship with ChatGPT, and all indications are they're kind of signing the deal with Google Gemini. And a little speculation was that, like, when they launch the new iPhones in, say, September, they'll do another announcement, say like, hey, also when you right click, you can pick ChatGPT or you can pick Gemini, right? They'll have both of them there. And that probably will make Apple feel good, because then they're not like beholden to one vendor.
Well,
And
it means they're getting another, 14 billion a year from Google, right?
probably there'll probably be some kind of deal, right? Yeah, so yeah, exactly right. They'll pick up some revenue, and then I don't know. Another little footnote that came out that I thought was funny was that Apple got a board observer seat rather
Right.
on OpenAI's board. So now you have Microsoft has a board observer seat, Apple has a board observer seat, and then of course you have the board themselves, and it's just like everyone is watching. It's like we cannot have this company go crazy during the Thanksgiving break and start firing people. Everyone, at
Right,
least
right.
everyone will be at the meeting if it happens. So I think, and I also just think that must be kind of an awkward meeting where you have like Microsoft and Apple, like they're just kind of looking at each other, like they're just quietly observing the board. They're like, I don't know if I
Mm,
like the fact that you're here. It just wants to be like, it just made like an awkward lunch. It was be like an awkward lunch meeting. Like, why are you here again? So
right.
all right. Well, open source. Good job, open source. And yeah, let's just keep the models free. Now, the other slide that I picked out in this report was around, hey, our good friend CI/CD. So they were talking about where AI is, if you will, helping that process. So they have 6 categories. And so obviously the category 0, kind of pointless, manual coding, obviously nothing going on there. Category 1 was code completion. So AI can basically, finish a couple, like a single line of code. So we've kind of had that for a while. We just call
Right.
that code completion. It's
Autocomplete
not
and
really,
yeah.
I don't think there's anything too exciting about that. Now, code creation, this is the stage they say we're at. Basically, this is where AI can generate extended.
Creation's a good name for it, right? It's not there's no category, there's no quality implied. It's like, oh, it's creating code.
Yeah, you're right. It's, I guess, the technical
It's like
definition.
it's hallucinating on the page for you, but it wrote some stuff that's code.
Yeah, so use AI to generate extended code blocks, design and implement APIs and correct existing code. Yeah, so it's good. So anyone that's like written a Python script or a Python code in the last couple of
With
years,
Copilot, yeah.
like
Yeah.
we've all done this. It's like, it's fantastic. It's awesome. And then of course, like what you're pointing is like you can run it, and then when you get all these weird errors, you can just give it back to him and be like, no, you weren't right. Try again. And it'll just do it, which is, I love it. So that's the current stage we're at. I think we all have experienced that. So the next stage they talk about is supervised automation, where AI handles multiple steps based on high level coding objectives with the human focusing on design and final reviews. It's like, I want this to be happening. I want this
I
to be
that
true.
that's what we're all like hoping
But it's
for.
like, I don't know. I mean, like, can you just be like, I mean, you kind of see people like build a website with it, but then there's like, seems like there's a lot of work left to actually make the website work or the web
Right.
app work. So I
It's
guess
getting
that's
there.
the next
It's getting there.
phase. It's getting
Yeah.
there. And then phase 4 is full automation, capable of more complex tasks without human review of the final output. Like, man, this feels like a little bit like self-driving. When are you going to be like, I don't even want a steering wheel? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. This just
Right.
feels far to me. Like, again,
I
we
think
want
I
it to
think
be true,
yeah.
but
I think supervised automation is gonna be a plateau for a long time, where because you can't trust it enough with the keys to the kingdom, right? You can't give your business over to this automation fully because the results can be so crippling. And so I think it's going to have to be supervised for a very long time. Yeah, because what this is just like automated cars where they're gonna be like, oh, the cars are automated, and then they're like, turns out it didn't understand police tape around a crime scene and drove right through it. You're like, that's kind of a bad thing to have. You needed to have some supervision on top of this to say like, hey, if you're confused, don't do that, right? Or don't don't automate yourself into a bad place. And I think there's going to be a lot of foot gunning going on before people, before I'm willing to trust it. And I think that's anybody who's at the bleeding edge is going to bleed.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's full automation. Well, they even have in the final one, which I guess the issue is called Skynet, full autonomy, right?
Yeah,
AI
grant.
sets its own goals based on fundamental rewards in a dynamic environment. It's like, well, at that point, it's like, I mean, we're not even talking about applications. It's just sort of like, hey, like, I don't know, make as much money as possible, trade in the stock market. Like,
Right.
I don't know. That's just like the full on. I don't want to say like I don't know if it's end of the world or whatever, but it just feels so far. Like that feels a little bit like science fiction to me. Which will be kind of interesting. So I don't know. I think the code automation, I like this, at least the phase they're in. I like the fact that they named it. I feel like I just feel like we're going to be in code creation step 2 for a while. I feel like when I say a while, I think like at least 5 years. Like I feel like it's going to be here for a while.
I mean, we're moving through it very fast though. Yeah. When you look at like the leaps and bounds that have happened, it's getting better. And as the LLMs get better and they get more access to higher quality code, does that exist? I don't know. Maybe that's the problem, is we're training it on code written by humans. So it's never going to be good.
Maybe, to tie into our first topic this week, it's like, okay, well, like supervised automation is in some ways the answer to this DevOps thing, right? It's like, hey, instead of like all the people having to like change the culture and things like that, it's like, can we offload a ton of this to the AI where we just have experts reviewing specific areas,
right.
Kind of like, it doesn't require a massive cultural change. It requires like maybe more expertise and more people being experts in certain areas. But the collaboration and the friction and the people part isn't as hard because so much of that is done.
I'm ready to buy
in AI. So again, like it feels
sell
like
it to me.
a million. Now again, we should also mention Redpoint, of course, is a venture capitalist. So of course they're like,
and as you look through their portfolio of offerings, it's like they're heavy on open source and infrastructure. And so for them to like tell the story, it's like they have skin in this game for sure.
For sure.
This is their area of expertise. This is what they're trying to will into the market. I'm here for it, but I think we're killing our junior developers, and I don't think you're ever going to achieve full automation. So good luck with that.
Yeah. So we'll see. Now I will say, I just put one slide in here. I thought, and again, I like this report, but we got to we got to review the good slides and the bad slides. They have a whole slide in here called the unbundling of observability. I was like, this slide feels extremely self-serving in the sense of like, they basically say it's like the unbundling of Splunk, and then they kind of go through and list a bunch of startups that are doing Splunk-like things. But I'm like, I don't know. This does not feel new to me. Like this is like the unbundling of observability. To me, I would argue it's like, this is like motherhood and apple pie, like monitoring, observability, performance, whatever. It's like, it's been bundled, unbundled, rebundled, renamed, named again, new movement, old movement, so many times. I can't even keep up with it. So like, there's nothing about this that is new to me. It's just like, bundle and unbundle away observability, people, and feel free to rename it. In the end, I know the observability people don't like it, but I'm just like, it's all just another form of monitoring. So anyway, we won't dwell on that slide. I just be like, I get what you're trying to do there, but like, I'm not buying that one, Redpoint people. And finally though, but just because we want to leave on like, I don't know, some economic good news. They did have some really nice charts here showing that the hyperscaler growth is rebounding. So we went through the little trough there. AWS got all the way down to only growing 12%. Oh my goodness, only growing 12% on a $100 billion business. What will we do? But now, don't worry, the line is going back. They're at 17, GCP's at 28, and Azure's at 31, at least according to the estimates there. So that just makes me feel good. Like, okay, well, things are back, man. At least they're slowly trending upwards. So hopefully we can, if you will, kind of get out of the gloominess that we had before. I don't know, any thoughts on hyperscaler growth?
The key is they're calling it the hyperscalers, not the infrastructure providers, because that growth, I feel, is coming off the back of other markets, right? The hyperscalers are providing services that used to be other discrete companies, right? You're not buying your database service from somebody else anymore. Mm-hmm. You're not buying your monitoring stack from somebody else. They're trying to get as much of your infrastructure dollar as possible. And they generally aren't lowering their prices, but they are offering more services that can take more of your dollar. And everybody and their goal is to be that black box for you, right? It all comes back to if you have one vendor who can provide everything, here comes more of the dollars.
Absolutely. That's true. Like I agree. I was trying to make it sound better than maybe it was. It's like, well, the hyperscalers, I guess I should say this, well, the hyperscalers are growing, but it doesn't
Yeah.
mean everyone else is growing. So that's maybe like it's but that's a trend I think has been going on for a couple of decades. But it's in there. It's a good report. Of course, we thank Redpoint for putting out information that makes our podcast fun to talk about. So you can check it all out in the report. It's really nice. Read it over. Now, final topic. We'll make it a quick one here. I just think sometimes, problems, issues, whatever it is, like if you give something a good name, it just becomes easier to talk about. So I ran into this on a podcast I was listening to, and it comes from Dan Davies. He, as far as I know, he coined this. So he calls this phrase accountability sinks, which is defined as a situation in which human system delegates decision making to a rule book rather than an identifiable individual. If something goes wrong, no one is held to account. And I just feel like this is a phrase that maybe should have always existed, or maybe it has always existed. Because I think anyone, like, just travel comes to mind. Like, you're with the gate agent, and the gate agent's like, I agree, I would like to do it for you, but the system can't do it. You got to wait till
hands
tomorrow.
are tied.
Like,
Yeah.
hands are tied. And like, there are numerous millions of examples about this. And then of course, we've kind of talked through some of them today around, it feels like we are, and I listened to a podcast, so I guess he wrote a book. I've not read it as well, but like, it does feel like this issue will only grow in society with, I mean, I think we already have a ton of it, but with the growth of AI, seems like it's even worse, right? We're going to get to a point potentially where like, no, we're already at a point, like we don't really know why AI rewrites. If you just say like, rewrite this sentence, make it more clear. It's like, we know it does it, but we don't really know why. And I guess that's the whole problem with hallucinations. Like, nobody really knows why they happen. We just know they do happen. And there's no one to really like complain at. I guess you can like largely just say, the LLM was wrong, but then, there's no beyond that. You can't like yell at one person.
Right.
I don't know. I coded up the linear algebra. Like, what else you want me to do here? Right. And that's what it is. So I don't know. I just feel like it's a great phrase. And if nothing else, I just feel like now at least you can say, it's like, oh, we're in an accountability sink. You can just kind of say it. And you can just name it. It's like, you can name the problem and be like, I'm not going to get on the travel. I'm not going to get rebooked because the system was crazy. Accountability sink. What could we do? You know what we should do? We should just go to the hotel for the night, have a nice dinner, and we'll just deal with it tomorrow. But I love the phrase. What do you think? Do you like the phrase?
Well, I like the phrase, but I hate when it happens to me because I mean, this is it's coming. The day's coming when you're just gonna be like, well, I couldn't do my job because, or the LLM keeps hallucinating consistently wrong, or it's just passing the buck to somebody else. And you think people hate government bureaucracies already? Wait till that's what we're doing. We're putting bureaucracies into code and outsourcing any rationale or thinking or discretion to them. But we've already been doing that for a long time, right? This is we're just following orders here.
Just following orders. Yeah, that's maybe in the end that's true. Well, listen, for all the listeners, maybe a little homework here. I just interested in good examples of accountability things. So if you have one that you think is particularly novel, interesting, something that like you think we should know about, you can either just send us an example and write it in at questions@softwaredefinedtalk.com. Find us in the Slack. Post your favorite accountability sink. I bet you there's going to be a lot of crazy ones, and I think, and the more crazy, the more fun. So,
well, and government law are full of them, right? And what do people hate, right?
Absolutely. All right. Well, speaking of accountability, our listeners keep us accountable, Matt. And so this week, I did have an anonymous analyst from an investment bank. I won't reveal which. I'll just say it's a big, well-known investment bank. They wrote in to confirm that they are still formatting the PowerPoint decks manually. And I got the email kind of late at night. I got the sense that person was working late at night. So and that's really what we need. We need Redpoint to do a little, life cycle for the investment analysts. Like, well, can they generate most of the PowerPoint, or can they have the PowerPoint be done automatically? So to all the investment analysts out there, I wish you well. good luck. Get good with the keyboard, right? I think a lot of people finish their rotation in June. For those that finished, congratulations. Enjoy the 4th of July sleep. For those who just started, good luck. I hope it goes well in your formatting skills. Also, if you would like stickers, as always, send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. I will be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. Now we have some conferences coming up. We've got DevOps Days Birmingham. I think that's Alabama. No, is that Alabama? That's not. Where is that one? That's August. Alabama. That is Alabama, right? Okay, before I said it, yeah, Birmingham, Alabama. That's August 19th through 21st. DevOps Days Antwerp. That's September 4th through the 5th.
Not Alabama.
Definitely not Alabama. And then Cote's got some places you can see him doing his day job, Spring One and SRE Day, and those are in August and September. So check all of that out. And Matt, I think you have an exciting recommendation for us, as I see here in the show notes. What's your recommendation this week?
So my recommendation this week is I'm going to be starting a new job soon, and I'm quite excited about the budget they've given me for my new office supplies. So they've already get a laptop. I didn't, it was the dreaded radio button of laptop choices. It was, do you want Lenovo or MacBook Pro? So I clicked that MacBook Pro.
Matt, may I interject? What do we call it? Was it a potential accountability sink? You got stuck there. It's like, what can we do? We can't make any changes.
I mean,
A or B. I'd like to give you the other thing that you want, but you can't. So I just like working it in. This next week during the 4th of July holiday, I'm going to be using it all the time. Accountability sink. Go on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please continue. What are you going to buy?
I'd love to save the company some money. I don't know what, maybe I'm getting the bottom line MacBook Pro, but I doubt it. I probably would have saved them some money. I'd go for the 14 instead of the 16. They're probably going to send me the 16.
So generous. You're so generous.
Accountability, right? Who can decide? But I've got I've got office budget. Most of the stuff in my office has already been upgraded. I've got I hope this is a decent mic, but I've got a fairly good monitor. All my accessories are up, so I'm looking for good recommendations, suggestions. There's going to be some mounts. I'm going to be moving stuff up off the desk. We're going to have some computer mounts, maybe some lighting. Definitely a new camera, but I'm open to suggestions, recommendations. So if you want to hit me up with good ideas, I'm all ears.
All right, let's make it a little bit easier for people. So we want a recommendation for cameras, lighting, and what else? Anything else? Was there another one in there? Or just like the unknown.
Unknowns. Yeah, surprise me.
Great thing that you have at
what
your
am
desk?
I overlooking? Yeah, what am I overlooking? Yeah,
I like it. All right. Well, it's good.
Yeah, I got money to spend here.
I love it. Well, good. All right. Well, I look forward to both you getting all that stuff and then your future reviews of that stuff. I'm always looking for recommendations myself. As far as my recommendation this week, so one, some self-promotion here. I would like to recommend the Cloudcast Cloud News of the Month, June 2024, mostly because I'm on it. So you should definitely check that out. It was always fun to be on there. I'm going to try to do a professional tease of why you should listen to this episode, Matt, so you can rate it. Okay, so you should listen to this episode to find out why I believe Dell's controversial return to office policy inadvertently became the most important employee satisfaction survey of our generation. That's what you're going to learn about when you listen to that podcast, as well as a bunch of other stuff Brian and I talked about. What do you think? Was that strong? I didn't have I don't think I brought enough yelling and enough emphasis on it. But do you think that
I think there's a lot of layers to unpack there. I think it's a good it's a good topic.
It's good. Hopefully it left you wanting more. So hopefully you'll download it and you'll listen to it, because that way, if you do that, I can go back on the show with more hot takes. So make Brian happy, make me happy. Download the Cloudcast, and then you probably already know about this one, but I figured I'd throw it out anyway. It's House of Dragons. Are you in on this? Are you watching season 2, Matt? Are you a subscriber?
I am not.
Game of Thrones fan.
I liked the books. I liked the series until the final season.
It got bad.
And so now we're off in fanfic land, and I'm not invested at all.
It's pretty good though. I will say I kind of went in. I think I had a similar kind of feeling to you, but I watched season 1. I thought it was pretty good. And now season 2, I've enjoyed it so far. So if you're looking for something to watch, it's pretty dark though. It's like, I guess it's like Game of Thrones. It's not
Game of Thrones
exactly,
was dark.
it's pretty dark. So it's like you need to be in the right kind of mindset to be watching that. So if you're watching, want something to watch, check out House of Dragons season 2. All right. Well, if you made it this far, we really appreciate it. Everything we talked about and many things that we didn't are all in the show notes. You can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/474. There you will see all of the links. You can find links to join us in Slack, follow us on all the social platforms, and just everything that you need. And of course, if you're in your podcast player right now and you're using a good podcast player, all the show notes are available right there. So you can go ahead and click around and see some of those. And with that, we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
What's up, man? That's your trademark. I was like,
I was muted. I'm like, oh,
I can't speak until I hear the,
right, the Roomba's going off in the other room. I had to start muting.
sounds right. All right. Well, good. Well, we had a lot of people
edit out the pause.
That I can do.
Make it boom. He's on it.
I can do that. That part I can do. But hey, before we go, Matt, I know you're going on vacation. Can we reveal where you're going on vacation? Because I had some questions I want to ask you about it.
Oh, I'm going to Hawaii.
All right. So give us the quick Matt Ray Hawaii, because I think you've been multiple times now. Yeah. So like give me your quick, like, for if you go to Hawaii, what are, like, I don't know, the 3, like, what island should we stay at, and what are the 3 to 5 things that we got to, like, we all have to do if we go to Hawaii?
We're going to the Big Island, Hawaii, which has kind of a bunch of tourist resorts on the dry side, and then the wet side has rainforest and the volcano. So definitely the volcano is a highlight. I think we're gonna try to go to the observatory this time. My kids are usually, until fairly recently, were too young, and then COVID hit. But the observatory you can go to either early morning or late night. So I think that's on the list. And then just, take in the luau just to do it. Just experience all the touristy things, because there's a reason they're touristy, right? They're fun.
They're fun, right? Yeah, they're fun stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, do you make it? Is your family like active vacation family, or is there some beach time, downtime involved?
It's scheduled downtime.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's an itinerary that's being shared.
Really?
But yeah.
Well, wait a minute, now I got more questions. Like, who puts together the itinerary? Is that like?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of greatest hits, like going to the volcano again and stopping and visiting certain places. And
all right, do you write it up, or does your wife write it up, or is it a collaborative effort?
It's a collaborative family effort. So
okay. All right,
it's me and my in-laws. So yeah.
Okay, well, good. Well, all right. Well, listen, I look forward. I think I like to just chill on the beach, but the family's growing restless. So I think potentially a trip to Hawaii next year. Maybe that's in the plan. So I will get with you offline. Maybe I'll get your outline of the greatest hits. Would be fantastic. So, all right. Well, to everyone else, I hope for those here in the U.S., if you are off on the 4th of July, I hope you have a great 4th of July. For those of you who aren't, I think you should just take the 4th off. Why not? Like, you know what? Just take it off and maybe go to the American restaurant in your city and just eat like, why not? I mean, might as well. Like, you know what? Just enjoy yourself. And we will be back next week, maybe a little bit earlier. We never know. It'll probably be on Wednesday. Scheduling's hard for us, so watch your streams. We'll show up, and we'll talk to you next time.